How much healing is possible through self-work? So someone who says they're avoidant, just becoming aware and learning about common triggers and noticing them, where and how they come from. I'm also already helped a lot with communication with people. The issues are obviously deeper, but I'm indecisive about finding a therapist who specializes. Well, Poppy, this is classic of an avoidant. I think I had an avoidant ask me once on my video, how can I actually become healthier in relationships without actually being in a relationship? So, okay. So self-work is definitely wonderful. You know, I offer self-study courses online, and I do a lot of self-work myself. And I actually don't really believe that a lot of therapy is going to be useful unless you're working on yourself at the same time, especially if you're someone who wants to see radical changes in your life, right? So self-work is wonderful, and I think a lot can be accomplished through self-work. But you can only ever see, think, perceive, and understand things from your own perspective. Okay? You know that expression, 10 heads is better than one? So, and that's even true if the only thing going to see someone 1 hour a week, once a week, is wonderful. That is a wonderful way to start throwing a wrench in the hamster wheel that may be going on in the patterns of relating in your life, right? And a lot can be accomplished with that. But if you're doing that and you're working on yourself and you're involving yourself in communities that do things that you like to do, and if you're experimenting with developing more secure relationships with friends, for example, if you're stepping out of this idea that love is scarce and that you can only get it from within the narrow scope of romantic love, then that is going to be the equivalent of 10 heads are better than one. And you're going to start to see and understand and experience the world in a much more enriched way, right? So self-work is great, but how are you thinking about self-work, right? How are you allowing yourself to open up to experiencing the contrast that exists all around you in life, not just in the context of romantic relationships, that will allow you to kind of butt up against your, like, for example, allowing your boundaries to butt up against someone else's boundaries, and then exploring, ooh, okay, that's something I like. No, I guess that's something I don't like. Oh, this is a place where I might challenge myself to be a little more open and available. That's a place where I'm not so comfortable being open and available. Now I know that about myself, right? So that primarily happens in the context of relationships, but it doesn't have to be in romantic ones. A therapeutic relationship is actually a wonderful place to practice this, because that therapist is, number one, trained in what they're doing, so they're not going to fly off the handle at you. Number two, that becomes a space in which you can explore the relational interactions with knowing that that person isn't going to emotionally abandon you. Okay. And knowing that, just knowing that, because it's their job not to emotionally abandon you, right? Then that is actually a secure place and environment within which you can start to play with and figure out these things for yourself without being threatened, or at least without experiencing threat from the other person. Now, in the context of a therapeutic relationship, threatening feelings will come up because your stuff will come up and it will try to bounce itself off the therapist. That's the theory of the benefit of therapy, is that whatever your internal struggles are, they become externalized in the context of the relationship with the therapist. And then the therapist responds in a way that whomever existed in your past did not, right? Or in a different way. And of course, stuff is going to come up. It's called countertransference, but the therapist isn't like a blank screen. The therapist is a human being, and there will be things that you bring up in the therapist. And that's actually a benefit, because then it's a real life situation, right? Being a therapist, I have deep feelings for my clients and concerns for their welfare and all of that. But I also know that, and have been trained and educated in how to show up for them in the ways that I think that they need. And so self-work is fabulous, but if the purpose of the self-work is to become, let's say, is to do things more effectively in your relationships, which is to say that to experience a higher level of quality of life in the context of your relationships, to get more of what you want in relationships, to feel more secure and happy and contented in your relationships, then at some point, you're going to have to engage with relationships. And I would recommend therapy as being a good place to start.